Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from Taiwan. I'm Jeffrey Chan. Taiwan is home to one of the world's most biodiverse marine ecologies, with nearly 1/10 of the world's marine species living among them. However, impacts from climate change have led to mass bleaching events along Taiwan's coast and outlying islands, with researchers racing to save this vital ecosystem. Today, we're joined by Anna Luy Tan, the director of White Flower, one film that focuses on Taiwan's unique coral ecosystem, the threat it faces, and the researchers trying to save them. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
So I was able to go to the screening of your documentary at the Climate Film Festival. And so I want to ask, what drew you to marine ecology and climate change, and what inspired you to do a documentary on this topic?
I think it all started from some of my earliest childhood memories. My dad is from the Philippines, and we'd spend a lot of summers visiting family there. And so I had the chance to be exposed to these amazing coral reef ecosystems, like some of the most biodiverse in the entire planet. And ever since then, I fell in love. And I still remember going into the reef and swimming there and coming up and wanting desperately to tell my family what I saw. And I feel like that feeling is essentially what led me to make this film. It was something that was inside me for quite a long time, ever since then.
So with your experience in the Philippines, and you're personally from Chicago, how did you find Taiwan, and why Taiwan? What was unique about Taiwan?
Well, I was here studying on a scholarship and was able to get a grant to make a film. And I was thinking about what is like the absolute most important and urgent thing to make, something that needs to be made right now. And what I landed on was the plight of the coral reefs, because we don't have much time before scientists say by 2050 they might all be gone. So this is a very precious window of time that we can act, and it's an opportunity and it's our responsibility to do so. So I felt, instead of like, I have a lot of different film project interests that I wanted to pursue, but this one was so much like greater, like so much bigger than me as an individual, that it really lit the fire underneath me to bring this film to fruition.
So I know you study neuroscience, film, and critical theory. That's a very rather unique and interesting combination. How did these different studies inspired you and influenced your filmmaking process?
I always felt like the disciplines were never quite separate. Whenever I approached science, it was with the heart of a poet. And I always had this feeling of that these disciplines were never really separate. So when I deepened my study of science and ecology, marine ecosystems, it only strengthened my conviction to want to communicate this to the rest of the world. There seemed to be a massive chasm between the scientific community and the general public. And I thought the medium of film, an artistic medium, one that provokes your affective self, your feelings, could be a pedagogical tool to basically raise consciousness in a different way and make that very vital scientific information that like the entire scientific community of the world has been building on and accumulating, but it remains siloed and isolated and maybe difficult to understand for most people. So I felt this is where I can come in and help to bridge this gap of understanding.
So this speaks to the interconnectedness of our lives and coral reefs. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
That's a big theme of the film, and it's kind of even, I felt the coral reef itself was kind of an embodiment of the interconnectedness that was kind of at the foundation of what I wanted to communicate, was to show that humans were not outside of nature, but a part of it. And I think that's kind of like a fallacy that we're kind of living with, this idea of separateness. But based on the empirical data and the consensus of the scientific community, our fates are intrinsically linked. And if the coral reef goes, so do we, so do 1 billion people and their livelihoods, the coastal people who live on the coast, people who rely on the protein of the ocean. 25% of the marine life depends on these coral reefs to survive. So just based on the facts, we are connected. And so I just wanted to bring that to light for more and more people so we can save this very precious ecosystem before it's too late.
So I really like the title of the documentary, White Flower. It is a clever pun in Chinese, 白花, white flower, or 白化, referring to coral bleaching. What inspired this wordplay?
As I was interviewing a lot of scientists throughout Taiwan, I was really surprised that the word actually used in Mandarin to talk about coral bleaching was 白化. I was like, really? And I could only, I thought, in my mind, I'm learning Mandarin as well. Like I kind of connected it to like white flower as well. And there's also, during funerals, like white is often associated with a funeral color, and white flowers are often brought to funerals. So I kind of wanted to draw a connection between what this film is as well, which is kind of sad, is a mourning. Like a lot of the process of the film is kind of tracking a change where in Taiwan in 2020, there was like a massive coral bleaching event that 1/3 of the corals died. And right now, like there's also massive bleaching events going on right in this moment. So I wanted to call attention to, I don't know, this feeling of loss that's already happened, but like to kind of show the weight of what is to be lost if we don't act now.
And what are some of the key things you learned by going out into the field and talking to these researchers?
It was a very transformative process making this film. I think that's what I really appreciated the most about it. I learned every step of the way, and from so many communities. It was the work of many hands, this film, and really just synthesizing the work of so many people and so many communities of knowledge. And I would say what I learned is that there's multiple epistemologies of the ocean. So we have science, the scientific community. They talk about it in a certain way. And they're using different approaches and like modes of analysis, which has its benefits and limitations. Then I also talked to like local fishermen and like kind of like a group of Taiwanese like uncles who kind of mentored me and supported me in being able to do underwater videography. And so they know about the Taiwan reef and filming it. They've been doing this for years. And so they taught me a new way of seeing, because you had to understand the topography of the ocean to understand the currents. You had to understand the patterns of when certain species come out to eat, and when the tracking of tides based on calendars of the moon. And these are completely different modes of understanding the ocean that scientists, there's some overlap, but I was very fascinated to see so many different ways of knowing.
And were there any moments during the production and filming that challenged your expectations or changed the way you see the ocean and marine ecology?
Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a marine biologist, so I've been very, I guess, tapped into like the scientific discourse about climate change since I was young. But I learned a lot of new things from the different scientists and research groups in Taiwan. Some of the main points I want to convey is that there's basically, I'll say, two main threats to the coral reef ecosystem everywhere, but specifically in Taiwan. Well, we have the massive one, which is the greenhouse gases being added to the atmosphere, which causes global heating, and the ocean takes a lot of the brunt of that heating. So that's what causes the bleaching, acidification, and so if it just tips just the right amount, the entire coral reef ecosystem is bleached. And there's this algal symbiotic partner with the coral, zooxanthellae, that gets expelled at a certain point if it gets heated too much, the water. So that's the tipping point thing that's really important. If we can keep that like base structure, the corals itself, which is a living animal, alive, then we can keep an entire ecosystem alive. So we have to look at the kind of quality of the water. So things like mismanagement of coastal mismanagement. So things where you're building along the coast that allows for like sedimentation to like enter the water, river runoff, these kind of just direct, debris and things that change the chemistry of the water, we can avoid that. That is so doable. We can do that right now, and we really should. And we could be saving a lot of our beautiful ecosystem here. And yeah, I think that's what's really cool is whenever I show this film to Taiwanese people, they immediately care so much. They're immediately concerned about protecting it.
What do you expect the Taiwanese audience or international audience to take away from the film?
That people really think about our time on the clock right now and our place in history right now, and really take that into consideration. And like I was saying, the opportunity of this moment and the immense responsibility of this moment we have to act, because what we do now is going to affect the next 100 years. It will affect all the generations that come after us. And I'm not being hyperbolic right now. This is a very unique point of time. We can look at it scientifically. This is the scientific consensus. So the film festival that you saw the film at, it was called Tipping Point because, like I was saying at the film festival, the progression of these changes is not linear. It's a exponential curve. So there's a point where it's going to accelerate so much. The rate of change is changing, so it's accelerating. So I really want to emphasize that and really empower people with the knowledge that we can do something right now, and it's this is our time to do it, and it's our responsibility, and the future generations depend on it.
What do you see the role of documentary in climate or marine advocacy?
Like I was saying, there was many different epistemologies of the ocean, like the scientific community and the way the fisher people saw the ocean, and even the indigenous people have a different way of understanding this. And initially, when I made this film, I kind of came in with a naive assumption that I could weave these things together. I wanted to synthesize them and maybe that bridge these worlds of knowledge. But actually, these worlds of knowledge kind of remain siloed, and they don't communicate very often at all. And sometimes there's scientists who are saying we need to protect this area, but then the fisher people are like, wait, that's my livelihood. I can't. There's conflict between scientists and fisher folk, and there's also conflict between scientists and indigenous communities. And this is kind of two worlds of knowledge that kind of remain maybe unintelligible to each other, or they're not often connecting. They're not often communicating with each other. I still think there's a lot of work to be done to kind of bridge those gaps, because there's a lot to be learned from one sphere of knowledge to the next. I mean, that was one of my initial goals with the film, and I think there's still more films to be made about that, and there's still more work to be done in that direction. But I think it's very vital that we try to bridge those worlds of knowledge.
Thank you, Anna, for joining us and sharing insights about your documentary.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. You can find more stories from TaiwanPlus News by following us on social media. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
We bring you stories from Taiwan. Every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's up, Taiwan? On TaiwanPlus.